Hey everyone, it's Carter King. If you're an educator, a leader, or just a parent who wants to teach kids about space, check out my newest book, Carter's Journey Through Space. It's available now on Amazon, Target, and bookstores everywhere. Come explore the universe with me.
Welcome to another episode of the Contagious Culture Podcast. I'm your host, Kyle King, and the goal of this podcast is simple: to help you create environments where people thrive. Through real conversations, practical strategies, and powerful stories, we equip leaders, educators, and change makers just like yourself to build cultures rooted in purpose, performance, and authenticity. Because culture isn't something you talk about, it's something you live. This is the Contagious Culture Podcast. Let's get started. Welcome back to another episode of the Contagious Culture Podcast. I'm your host, Kyle King, and the goal of this podcast is simple: to help you create ecosystems and environments where people thrive. Look, today I'm excited to get into this conversation. I have somebody that is truly shaping community, somebody that is building stronger organizations, and somebody that's making culture something that the community can feel. My friend Maddie Myers, SVP and Director of Client and Community Relations at PNC for the Western Carolinas, including, obviously, the lovely city of Charlotte. Maddie's work blends corporate leadership with real community impact, from early childhood literacy programs to arts and cultural initiatives. She's truly showing how business and community go hand in hand. But beyond her impressive professional role and background, Maddie is a mom, a volunteer, a leader who shows up in ways that inspire those around her. Maddie is somebody that I trust, that I believe in, and that her leadership is truly a light that is shining not only in North Carolina, but countrywide. Maddie, how you doing?
Good. How are you, Kyle? That was such a nice introduction. Thank you.
Yes, you deserve it all. I'm so, before we even get into like all the questions that your team's gonna have to review. Before we get into that, I'm really, really excited to have this conversation. You are doing just amazing work. How you're bridging, like building bridges, how you're a connector, how you're a trailblazer in this city. I'm just really thankful to share time with you. And before we even really get started, I'd love to just ask you just this first question: what keeps you going?
That's a good question. Man, especially this week, I've had about allergies and all the things. But I think it always goes back to mission and helping people. And I wear a lot of different hats in this role, so it's not the focus isn't always being out in the community. Sometimes it's internal focus, sometimes it's business minded and business focused. But I think at the end of the day, having an impact is what gets me out of bed.
It's interesting when I hear like having an impact or driving missions and making a difference, but I'm sure that that's a trait that I find in leaders, yes, but it's not always a trait that is just born. You're born with it. There's probably either someone or something that happened or someone that exposed you to what you do that really propelled you into the work that you do today. Like, take me back. Like, what helped to develop this value of service, this value of impact within you?
Yeah, it's a great question. I think I give credit to my grandparents. They've always been very philanthropically minded and very purposeful and intentional about where they want to have an impact. And so that's kind of always been um, I guess just a part of me. And then I guess too, I would go back to my first job. I was an intern with the Livestrong Foundation, and coming out of college, I wanted to be into this. I wanted to be in the sports world. I wanted to be in sports marketing. Um, and I remember, I got this internship, and I was like, well, there's a little bit of sports there, so let me jump in. And I did, and obviously with it being a nonprofit and having just tremendous impact that it did, that was really where I got my feet wet in the nonprofit space and in community. And then it's really been nurtured through this role. And I've been very fortunate to be a part of this organization that really cares about the community.
Now, when you think about your work now, because you've done a lot, you've went from a lot of different areas and it's kind of evolved to what you do now. When you think about your work, what is different about your work now versus when you were really serving on the ground of a nonprofit organization?
Sure. Yeah. No, another good question. I think it's almost like I've my role has reversed a little bit. And so, I was on the fundraising side um and doing the work on the event side and on the ground level. And now I get to really focus on the impact that um, the bank has and the resources that we have, and maximizing those resources to create impact. So rather than doing the fundraising, I'm able to do more of the funding and really utilizing the resources.
Maddie, you've probably interfaced with many, many organizations in your tenure.
Sure.
What are the differences between organizations that are what we like to say within our organization optimized or ready to receive funds versus the organizations that potentially need some more time before an organization like yours would deploy resources?
Yeah, we always kind of say we'd like to have somebody or an organization be up and running for 2 to 3 years before we really get engaged, and that's just to kind of iron out all the kinks, get ducks in a row, that kind of thing, and then to really know what works and what doesn't.
Mm.
And then that's honestly like such an optimal time for us, because then we're able to jump in and be partners kind of on a pilot program level and say, let's help you get this started. Um, let's get this started and have impact and see where it goes and build over time. So, and ultimately it all goes back to relationships. So, whether you're ready or not ready, I think starting with a conversation and a vision and your mission, sticking to that mission, not doing too many things just because they all sound good and we want to, I think like in nonprofits and individuals with big hearts, we want to do everything. We want to help. We want to be everything to everybody. And I think the more focused you can stay on mission is critical.
One of the things that I talk about often is mission drift and
Mhm.
how oftentimes organizations will build, but then they'll get distracted by what the industry is wanting or how organizations' funding priorities are changing, and they move away from their initial mission so that they can receive resources. How do
Sure.
you feel about that? And what would be your advice to organizations to really just stick with your mission and stay niched down, like you mentioned?
Yeah, it's it's really appealing to want to do that, because you want to kind of go where the money is. And I always tell organizations, don't create a program or something just because it fits funding priorities.
That's good.
Do it because it's what is required of the work and your mission. Because you start creating something just for a funder, and now you're doing that mission drift, and you're kind of going off in another direction. Um, and I don't want to create work for organizations. I want to help them do their work, so I don't want to create extra work for them, if that makes sense.
100%.
And so it's hard, right? It's hard to stay focused, but it's it's a skill that I think it takes a lot of honing, and I think it's just something that you have to practice over time. And it's okay to say no to organizations that have money or that want to give you money. I know
Yeah.
that's
That's
way
a tough one.
easier said than done. It's very tough,
Yeah.
but I do think it's important for the organization and for the funder, because now all of a sudden there's just extra work created that's not as organic.
That's good. I love how you mentioned this. It takes a skill. And earlier on in the conversation, you mentioned that you essentially started as the fundraiser, but you've
Mhm.
evolved as the fund giver. Um, what are some of the skills that carried over early in your career to what you're doing now that has really been able to propel you to where you are today?
Yeah, I think one of the biggest things is listening. And that can kind of sound easy, but I think it's hard. I mean, in fundraising, you have to listen and build relationships um, with your constituents. Why do they want to give? Why are they passionate? What resonates with them? Um, and I think on the funding side, you have to listen to the need. And
Mm,
what is the organization? What are they doing? What are all the different ways you could possibly partner or figure something out, brainstorm, connect over time. Maybe if it's not something that's in the first conversation that makes sense, that you can really connect and partner together, maybe it's the third or fourth conversation once you've kept listening.
yeah.
um, I had my predecessor and my mentor, Barb Bascom. I give her a lot of credit. um, and she taught me a lot of things, but one of the things she always said was, we have two ears and one mouth for a reason. And so that's kind of stuck with me. And you really have to listen, I think, as a leader anywhere, but in fundraising and in funding.
Let me ask this, and I hear this a lot, the power of listening, the power of curiosity, especially within the
Mhm.
nonprofit space. It's interesting because when I was in corporate, I never really, people don't talk about listening much. And that's probably one of the challenges. But when we think about like the listening portion, could you really talk to nonprofit leaders that are listening in right now? What should I be listening for? Like, what is that? How can I develop or mature my ears so that I can understand what I'm listening for, so that I could fit within the gap, so that I can identify opportunities, so that I can identify potential problems where we could prevent or create solutions as well?
Yeah, I think listening for funding priorities of an organization, because I give my organization a ton of credit. We have really stuck to early childhood education for over 20 years now, and because of that, we're able to have an impact. And so, we don't go outside of our scope that often. And so, I would really encourage um, organizations, when you're listening, to listen to listen to those funding priorities, and you know and ask good questions, like, because sometimes there is a way to partner, even if it's not completely obvious at first.
Yeah.
um and so yeah, I would listen to what the funding priorities are. I would ask good questions. um and then if it's not a fit, that's okay.
Yeah.
And I know that's tough to walk away from. But let's keep the conversation going, is what I would always say, because you never know, in that third or fourth conversation, if you've done something maybe different, or if something is shifted on my end, maybe there's room to partner. So yeah, listen to the funding priorities. Listen to timing of gifts and funding cycles. Like, when maybe our fiscal year is a little bit different than yours, so maybe that could help or hurt in a certain way. Um, yeah, so just listen to the funding priorities, the funding cycles, when funds are available, when it's appropriate to have certain
Yeah.
conversations, um, and and then just ask good questions.
Maddie, do you find that most organizations, especially on the banking side, have very similar funding cycles where you probably need to be having these conversations Q3, Q4 if you need funds for that following year, or is it completely different corporate or just based upon individual entities?
Yeah, I don't know if I can totally answer that question, only because I can't speak for other organizations.
Yeah.
I would imagine there's some similarities.
Yeah.
But and I think too, it depends. Are you working with a foundation, or are you working on charitable contribution sponsorship side. So it just kind of depends. I would imagine there are a lot of similarities.
Yeah. I love what you mentioned earlier about PNC's really their focus for the last 20 years on early childhood education and early childhood literacy and programs like the Dolly Parton's Imagination Library that you even exposed to me. Like we've been using it, but we never knew that that was the actual program. Those things are close to your heart. Why do you see these initiatives as both, I guess, a social and economic priority, especially for Charlotte?
Sure. So, I think there's a challenge that we're seeing is that kids are not entering kindergarten on able to read or on grade level. And so, I think our charge is really to help prepare kids for kindergarten, and that's the challenge we're seeing, and that has future impact. That has impact for a long time. If kids are starting behind, it takes longer to get caught up, and then ultimately that impacts workforce and ultimately the economy, whether that's local or wider spread.
That's good.
So I think that's the challenge that we're up against. And yeah, I do. I'm really passionate about what we do. The Dolly Parton Imagination Library is one of the programs that Smart Start of Mecklenburg County runs here locally, and there's different organizations that run it in different areas. But and that actually takes me to kind of the point about listening, Kyle, because you know and then that makes my role a little bit different from a role of one of my counterparts in another part of our footprint. There might be different priorities or different organizations doing different things in other markets.
That's good.
So I think that's the importance of listening too, because what somebody's doing over in a different part of the country, while we still have similar priorities, that community may have different needs. And so, the way we partner in the community could look a little bit different. But I don't mean to go off on a tangent with that and going back to listening, but I love Dolly Parton's Imagination Library. And it is personal to me too, because I'm a mom, and like you mentioned, and I actually have another one on the way, which we're really excited about. So we'll be signing her up for Dolly Parton's Imagination Library soon, as well. But I just think getting books in front of children and having them read and read with their caregivers, and I think it's just really important. It goes a long way.
What does impact look like? I love the work that you are doing. I love the work that the organization is doing, but I always love to hear vision stories as well. 5 to 10 years from now, what ideally, if everything worked exactly how you all are planning it organizationally from a leadership perspective, what change would the city see? What change would our students and our children see as well? Hey, it's Kyle. Sorry to interrupt your programming, but I got a quick culture check for you. How's your team's energy right now? I mean, literally, right now. Are people feeling inspired? Or are they just showing up? See, here's the truth. Culture doesn't change because we talk about it. It changes because we live it actively every single day. And that's what I help organizations do. Build contagious cultures that people actually want to be a part of. Through keynote talks, interactive trainings, and hands-on consulting, I help leaders transform the way their teams connect, perform, and grow. So if your culture needs a little bit of spark, let's light it up together. Visit theculturelab.org, again, theculturelab.org, or connect with me directly on LinkedIn at Kyle S. King to learn more about how we can work together. Because remember, your culture is contagious. Make it worth catching. Now let's get back to the program.
Yeah, it's a good question. And I think, it can be answered a lot of different ways. And there are really good, great, strong organizations out there focused on specific impact like that. I think Read Charlotte is really trying to get folks reading on grade level. And that's a very specific goal. So, you can certainly measure impact in that capacity. But I also think what's really important is details. And what I like to say, the bank has this brilliantly boring tagline. And so I like to say, the details are boring but brilliant. And so it's details that really matter in whether it's grants, whether it's sponsorships. I'm going away from kind of the broader impact question, but I think you can have in philanthropic impact, but you can have impact in a lot of different ways, right? So if you're putting on an event, say, you want to make sure that there are trash cans nearby. Who thinks of trash cans, but you want to make sure that it's super easy, that people don't even have to think about it, but they're able to throw their trash away or recycle or, anything like that. So, I think it's the brilliantly boring details that matter, that ultimately will have that impact, whether it's on the philanthropic side, the business side, really no matter what you're doing or what your focus is.
I love that. And I have this visual, and I mentioned this a few weeks ago as I'm preparing for this speech, about how one puzzle piece can never create a full vision. And when you go to the store, any store, and you buy a puzzle, there's literally no puzzle with just one piece. And when I think about what you just mentioned, what I see is that PNC works with this consortium of organizations that are all different puzzle pieces, and all of us collectively are going to help create this vision for the city of Charlotte, or this vision for our students in education. And anybody listening is kind of like, you have to think about what is my contribution, and what what piece do I provide or contribute to this organization or this grander challenge that we're trying to overcome. When I think about, even before we started talking, we talked about like different leaders. Shout out to April Whitlock at Lending Tree. And, Charlotte has a very impressive network of leaders across arts and business and nonprofit sector. How do we work together and collaborate so that we can collectively create meaningful change? Like, what are some of the things that we can do as leaders so that we can support our students in education, so that we can support arts programs, so that we can really develop and continue to create this vision for what we see as in our city?
Yeah, there's a lot of different ways to answer this question. So I'm trying to think of the best way to do it. Other than vote in local elections.
Yeah.
I had to put that plug in there. Yeah. I think, we can listen to the conveners. There are a lot of conveners in Charlotte, whether it's Foundation for the Carolinas, United Way, Smart Start. There are a ton of conveners, and I think they're bringing people together, all these different puzzle pieces, to have conversations. And so, yeah, I think I think lean in, listen where you can, and again, kind of like organizations, you don't have to be everything to everyone. You don't have to volunteer at 5 different organizations, to have impact. I think just really try to lean in and listen where you can, and find your passion. Like, I think as individuals and leaders, where do I want to plug in? What matters to me? What can I bring my children along to do with me? And, so it's a family thing. It's not something that's taking me away from something else that I want to be doing or spending my time on. So, I think it's listening and learning what's going on in the community. What are other people already doing, and how can I join in and be a part of it?
I love that. Maddie, you've been doing this for a long time now. And I want you to really think about the young leaders, those emerging leaders. It was day one in Charlotte for you, and you are just driven to make an impact. You want to make a tangible impact. What would be the advice that you would give to young professionals or those emerging leaders in the city of Charlotte?
I would join a committee on a nonprofit. And so, I think there's often a lot of talk around board service and how wonderful and important that is. But I think committees are an easy way to get involved with organizations, then get to know the community. You meet people. If I was brand new to Charlotte and wanted to just feel connected, what's something I'm passionate about? So, one of the first committees I joined was Levine Museum of the New South. I was excited about moving to the city of Charlotte, and I wanted to learn more about the history and things like that. And so I joined, I think it was the Marketing and Development Committee, and it was a way to just meet people. And then, it was also one of those things too that the commitment is not at the level of a board commitment. So whether it's time, talent, treasure, that's all. You can make that commitment what you want it to be. And in a way, you're interviewing the organization to see if you want to continue to stay involved, if you want to continue on to a board service journey. Or maybe through that work, you meet other people and other organizations that you want to go and explore those things as well. So I guess my advice would be, I mean, you can do a lot of different things when you move to a city, but as a young leader, if you want to get involved in the community specifically, look for an organization that is doing work that you care about and try to join one of the committees.
I love that. And you sit on a lot of boards, and you're a very busy woman. How did you identify the organizations that you care about, and what were the steps that you took to be able to best engage with these organizations?
Yeah, so I just rolled off the board of the Children's Theater of Charlotte, and obviously, children is and education is a priority of ours as an organization, and arts and culture. But I was in musical theater growing up, and in high school, yeah, and I had some solos and things like that.
Okay.
So yeah. That was like, the height of that talent in high school was. But so there was a passion and an interest there. And so, there was natural desire to want to be involved with something like that. And how can I help, kids that have that same interest? And so really that's how I got involved. And I just reached out to the organization and said, what's your timing like? And how can I get to know you all better? And ultimately, when the time was right, there was a spot open on the board, and they invited me to join. So, I think that can look a little bit different depending on the organization's needs. They're trying to fill different gaps for their needs. And then I'm trying to think, Smart Start. I'm on the board of Smart Start of Mecklenburg County, like I mentioned. And that was really a natural fit for the funding that PNC is working towards. And being involved with early childhood education, not only is it really the funding side, I really shouldn't even say the funding side. It's more of, because board service doesn't always mean funding comes with it. It's more of, I want to be engaged in this community. I want to learn the challenges that are happening within this community. And I just want to be close to the conversations and what's happening, so I can be, whether that's a better funder or just a better partner, a better thought leader, anything around that, around early childhood, I want to, be more equipped to be a part of. And that organization really helps me do that. So, yeah, so they were fortunate to have me on, and it's been great. And then, there are some other boards and committees that I do just out of personal passion.
Yeah.
But yeah.
Maddie, what gets you excited? Like what's something that just personally or professionally that just has you excited these days?
I mean, personally, I am just obsessed with my daughter.
I love it.
I really am. Like, I know that sounds so funny, but she's 18 months old and just the cutest thing in the world. And it was so great. Like, I actually took her a few weeks ago. I took her over to Winghaven Gardens here in Charlotte, and it's just such a beautiful space. There's a children's garden that they had that I was able to take her to. And so that was really fun for me, because that was, personal side of things, and I have a work relationship with Winghaven. And so it was really nice to be able to blend the two, and to see her kind of like thrive in this outdoor space and with all these natural resources. And it was a ton of fun. So yeah, I mean, I could sit here and talk to you about my daughter all day long.
No, definitely. Same here. We have a 2-year-old as well, as a 10-year-old. And our 2-year-old, she's just, she's having full conversations now. She's just a breath of fresh light, like just a breath of fresh air.
Totally.
Just absolutely amazing in all the ways, like all the ways. She's
Yeah.
I feel like she's 2 going on 12.
Right,
So
right. And it's so fun to see at this age, like they're learning something new truly like every day. And
yeah,
so, just seeing like the light bulbs go off and her little facial expressions and the words she's starting to connect um and she's just so funny. So yeah, I totally get that. They're a light for sure.
definitely. What is and we had this conversation the first time that we connected.
Mhm.
Um, if you look at your life, Maddie, over the next 5 years, 7 years, and you could snap your fingers and you changed an infrastructure or a community or did something that could change a system, what change are you going after?
Oh, Kyle, that's a big question. I don't know that I'm ready for that one. A change. I think going back to early education, that just all kids would have access to books, would have access to reading and learning, and um, because it's so foundational. I mean, a child by the age of 5, 90% of their brain is developed. I mean, that's staggering. That is a big number. And so, you know, that foundation is so important. And so I think that's, if I could see any kind of change or have an impact in a certain place, that's really where it lies.
When you look back at your career and your impact, what is the one lesson? What's one principle that you hope leaders, even listening in, would take away from your own journey?
I think it would be to, I mean, I keep going back to listening, but I would really say to pause and take a look around, um, and listen to issues that are happening or things that are happening. And I'll tell you why. I go back to when I first started at the Live Strong Foundation, and I started in 2012, which is, if you know anything about that organization, um, there was a big Oprah interview in January 2013, and so one of the best pieces of advice I had from another mentor outside of the organization at the time said, just watch and learn, because this is a big moment in
Mm,
this organization, and soak up as much as you can. And so I think that can really be applied to a lot of things, whether you're working with your team and what their needs are, whether you're listening to community, whether you're listening to other leadership. I just think it's so important to listen and soak up what's going on around you before you can dive in and take action.
that's such a powerful perspective because I think that a lot of times, especially in these spaces, we're taught and conditioned to just keep going and keep going and keep pushing
Right.
and keep creating, rather than taking the time to pause, to stay silent, to be observant, to watch, and to listen. And I find that even in my own career. And, as visionaries, idealists, you are always creating a new thing and wanting to do this. But you have to recognize, and a mentor gave me this years ago. He said, you can do everything that you want to do in life, but you just can't do it at the same time.
Yeah, I like that.
Sometimes it's the time for not more action, but more information so that you could be able to make the most data driven decision, is what he said. When you think about your career, your life, Maddie, and this is one of the questions that I always ask, oftentimes we have these slingshot moments, the moments in our lives that pull us back, that potentially humble us, that show us who we are, and what we're made of, and then it slings us forward. It gives us purpose. It gives us power. What was that moment for you?
My husband was diagnosed with cancer. That was that moment for me. I will, fast forward and say he's doing very well. He's healthy, and yeah, we're very, very fortunate have great doctors and that kind of thing. So yeah, he's cancer free and he's doing well. But this was close to 10 years ago that he was diagnosed. And you know, I had actually just joined PNC at the time, and I should say I give so much credit to the team around me and my boss and boss's boss and all the whole organization really, because they gave me even as a new employee, they just kind of gave me the space that I needed to figure this out and then
Yeah.
come back, and it really created a sense of loyalty on
Of course.
on this side. But yeah, it was a slingshot moment. I think in a lot of ways, I'm really grateful for my hard days now, because my hard days are really not that hard. They're just normal bad days.
Of
And
course.
and so, I'm grateful for that. And I think too, it gives you just such perspective on, you never know what's going on in somebody's life. You never know what they're showing up with, especially when I think about all the nonprofit organizations that I'm fortunate to work with. You know, these folks are often on the front lines of hearing some really challenging issues. And
Yeah.
so they may have just heard a story that they're trying to process, and now they're turning to me about a grant application. And, so it's just, you never know where somebody is coming from. You never know what somebody's going through. And so it's just a reminder to be kind.
I love that.
Um, yeah, so that was my slingshot moment, in a lot of different ways. I mean, I could talk about the lessons I've learned from that for a long time, but um, yeah, that was it.
No, I appreciate you sharing that. And I really value the authenticity and the transparency. And I know we've had some conversations, some transparent conversations. Um, there's someone listening in right now that's going through that slingshot moment. There's somebody
Sure.
in that is trying to really build that impact and wanting to create change and do all of these different things. But there's some personal things that are weighing them down from really being able to propel their mission forward.
Mm.
What advice would you say to them?
Yeah, I would say um, find your rock, or where do you get your strength from? Find that piece. Maybe it's, confiding in a friend. Maybe it's, for me personally, it was a faith journey. I know that's not for everyone. So that's, find what that is for you. Find where you're going to go back to get your strength, because, you can feel like really heavy. There can be like, there's a lot of hard stuff going on in the world, and so if you're going through something personal, yeah, I just say find what that rock is for you, and come back to it, and lean on it, get the strength from it that you need, to just get out of bed the next day and to just keep moving forward. And kind of like you said, I mean, I loved what you said about you can do everything you want, but you can't do it all at the same time. Give yourself grace, you know sometimes sometimes a win is just getting out of bed and getting through the day, and that's okay. That's a good win.
Maddie, this has me feeling all types of ways, like in a good way. Because this is, I believe that oftentimes we have these conversations, podcasts, or speaking engagements and panel discussions, and we don't really talk about the real challenges, like the real things. And I
Sure.
appreciate you leading with your heart and being open and honest about the real challenges that we experience as people, human beings first, that potentially impact how we show up as professionals, but we have to continue to find that rock. And I'm giving a speech this weekend. And interestingly, this is such a full circle moment. One of my key components is I'm going to give them a rock, and
Oh, wow.
you have to be anchored in something. Because I believe that is important. Like, how do you go back? Like, when you go through these moments, what are you going back to fill your cup, or to release or unpack what you're feeling, or
Yeah.
reveal who you are, all of those different things. So I appreciate you mentioning that. You've done a lot in this city, and you're just beginning. Where can people support you? How can we continue to lift up PNC's initiatives that you all have going on, and where can people find you as well?
Yeah, thank you. No, I would say, any of the PNC channels on social media, you can see the great work that's being done, not just here locally and in the Western Carolinas, but across our footprint. And then as well, you can follow me on LinkedIn. That's where a lot of our local work is showcased, and always happy to connect on LinkedIn and anything like that. So don't be a stranger. Feel free to reach out.
Oh, I love it. I love it. Anybody listening right now, connect with Maddie on LinkedIn. She actually responds. That's how we got connected. Um, so thankful for you, Maddie. So thankful for the work that you're doing and how you are taking the intentional time to connect business, community, and culture together in the Queen City. If you are still listening, one of the questions that we always ask to our listeners is, what type of culture are you spreading? Maddie is spreading a culture of love, a culture of listening, and a culture of leaning on relationships so that we can impact our community. If this is your first time listening to the Contagious Culture podcast, review it, like it, share it, and subscribe to the episode. The energy you bring is the culture you create. Make yours worth catching. We'll see you all next episode. Thanks for tuning in to the Contagious Culture podcast. If this episode challenged or inspired you, hey, take a second to share it with someone who's building culture in their world. Make sure to like, subscribe, and leave a review. It helps more leaders, educators, and change makers just like yourself join the movement. You can connect with me on LinkedIn or YouTube at Kyle S. King for more tips, tools, and methodologies to be able to help you create this ecosystem of absolute excellence. Until next time, lead boldly, live intentionally, and remember, your culture is contagious. Make it worth catching.